Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551. Excuse me. And I am back with a video review. And for this review, I'm going to be taking a look at Metroid Dread from the Nintendo Switch. Plus, I want to give my thoughts on the movie that I just saw, the Eternal.to. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link down in the description down below, or you can click on the card that will appear up on this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. For parents out there, it's worth pointing out that Metroid Dread is rated T for teens, ages 13 and up by the ESRB, while the movie Eternals is rated PG-13 though. 19 years, if I'm saying this correctly. 19 years is how long we waited for a sequel to, say, Metroid Fusion, though. The Metroid series, though, has its fan base, and certainly there are people who enjoy it, though, but it hasn't gained the kind of popularity the way Mario has, though, or say Pokemon for that matter, but there still is an audience for it, though. It's the game that started the game that was where a lot of other developers have built inspiration, like the legendary Castlevania Symphony of the Nights, released back in 1997, though, and so forth, though. And there have been several entries into the series, though. Some have been controversial, like Metroid Federation Force and Metroid Other M, though I don't think Metroid Other M is as bad as the internet makes it sound like it is, and I wouldn't mind seeing that being ported over to the Nintendo Switch. But we've also seen folks who have their own favorites, like Super Metroid is certainly a personal favorite of mine, with basically the Metroid Prime Trilogy coming in second. The first time we saw Samus in a 3D, a true 3D Metroid game, though, even though it's done from a first-person perspective, though. Now, obviously, we're still waiting for Metroid Prime 4, which we know was announced back in 2017, but then Nintendo did a video updated in 2019, realizing they had to start all over because it wasn't living up to the expectations they wanted, though, and Aulx Studio stepped in, though. And while I applaud Nintendo for apologizing for Metroid Prime 4 not living up to the expectations they wanted it to be, at least being honest about the situation with Metroid Prime 4, there is still some criticism over the fact that they should have gone with Aulx Studio in the first place. So while we patiently wait for that game and all, we definitely got this one, Metroid Dread, though. Now, what was interesting about this one is that this game, really for a lot of folks, came out of nowhere. Announced during E3 2021, though, a lot of people were surprised to see Nintendo not only bring us a new entry in the Metroid series, but to hear the name Dread, since that name was used a lot of times, though, from, I think, little snippets here and there in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, to rumors about what the next Metroid game was going to be called, which was called Dread. And now we finally, after 19 years of waiting, though, we finally got our hands on the Metroid Dread, though. And I will honestly say that while there are some hiccups here and there I have with Metroid Dread, I honestly can see how some people are going to view this as sort of a Game of the Year contender, though. Although it does have some competitions like Psychonauts 2, Guardians of the Galaxy, Forza Horizon 5, and so forth, though. But I definitely see why this could be up on the Game of the Year category, though. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros, though. And that is, visually speaking, the world in Metroid Dread looks really nice, though. I love the fact that they aimed for something more of, it's still a 2D game, but with like a 3D background and so forth. It's really nice. You see like the world like coming alive to a certain extent, though. It's kind of similar to how I view, Donkey Kong Returns and Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze in a way. So visually speaking, the game definitely looks good. Plus, the fact that it runs at 60 FPS is definitely nice, though. I mean, could it have run well at 30 frames per second? I mean, it's possible. After all, Metroid Samus Returns on the Nintendo 3DS ran at 30 frames per second, but certainly there's nothing wrong with it running at 60 FPS. So visually it looks nice, though. I like the 3D background with the 2D gameplay, and of course running at 60 FPS is certainly a bonus as well, though. Next thing I do want to talk about is the gameplay, and the gameplay follows sort of the tried and true formula if you played past Metroid games or Metroidvania games, example, in any any game that it was Metroidvania type style gameplay. So basically is that it's not going from point A to point B. It's the fact that not everywhere is going to be opened up right away. You will have to come back to some of these areas a little bit later, gaining certain power-ups and so forth, like the grappling beam, or basically the speed boost, or the variant suit or gravity suit. Some of these stuff where you won't be able to reach certain areas without having that certain power-up, to basically having to reach those areas if you're trying to upgrade trying to, expand your ammo capability, like your missile capability or your energy tank capability, though. So it follows the tried and true formula that Metroid is known for. Those who are like those type of games will still probably enjoy this game. Those who haven't, I can't see this one changing your opinion, but either way, it follows that tired and true Metroid or Metroidvania style gameplay, and personally, I have no issues with that. I am a fan of those type of games, to be exact. And last but not least, we do want to talk about is the controls. And for the most part, the game follows basically the control scheme that if you played Metroid Samus Returns on the Nintendo 3DS, you'll feel right at home with this one. The controls are very similar, though. There are some changes to it in terms of button setting and all, mostly because the controls on the 3DS certainly are different than, say, if you were using the controls on, like, the Switch Pro controller or the Joy-Cons for that matter, though. But in either way, those who've played Samus Returns will be familiar with the controls, especially with the holding down the R button to sort of aim Samus's gun to take out certain targets, or to use the grappling beam in any way, or basically, timing your ability to counter an enemy's attack when you see sort of a flashing light, and to hit the X button to counter that attack very easily. Timing is very important, to be exact, though. But some of the moves have also been some upgrades here and there, like for example, getting the morph ball. Now you have the ability to jump with the morph ball. You don't need to go find, like, say, the spring ball or anything like that, though. So there are some upgrades here and there, but those who were okay with the Metroid Samus Return controls won't have any issues with the controls in Metroid Dread. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, which is the cons, and I will give my thoughts on the Eternal movie. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Metroid Dread for the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are really only 2 cons I have in regards of Metroid Dread. We'll start off with the first one, which is basically the controls. Now, I talked about the controls, how for those who are fans of Metroid Samus Returns will pretty much understand the controls, and by all means, they're not bad or anything like that. The issue is that if you haven't played Metroid Samus Returns on the Nintendo 3DS, then there is a very good chance, though, the controls might have a bit of a learning curve, ranging from learning some of Samus's moves to trying to execute certain moves, especially when you're doing with the speed boost, to basically aiming and trying to hit, your targets and all that stuff. So for some folks, the controls are going to be a bit of a learning curve, though. Not so much for those who've played Metroid Samus Returns, but might be for those who are just new, who have never played a Metroid game ever or anything like that, though. Honestly, I don't view this really as a high con, because to me, I gotten used to basically the controls in Metroid Samus Returns, though. But since Metroid Samus Returns didn't, from what I understand, didn't sell as well as some people would have hoped of, mostly because it came out on the Nintendo 3DS around the time the Switch was getting started and the Switch was truly taking off. Some people might struggle a little bit with the controls. Also, while I don't have an issue using, say, like the control stick, to move Samus around, though, I personally still prefer to use the control pad over the control stick. It's not that the game is unplayable with the control stick. It's just the control pad is my choice when it comes to playing 2D games in general. It's the same view I had when I played Metroid Samus Returns, and it's sort of the same view I still have with Metroid Dread. That said, though, it doesn't, playing with the controls, using the control stick to control Samus in a 2D game isn't necessarily bad, and it doesn't make the game unplayable in any shape or any form. And last but certainly not least though, there is the new enemies to deal with, is the EMMIs. If I'm saying the name correctly, it's EMMI, and boy, they're a pain in the ass to deal with sometimes. So these are basically one of the newest enemies you'll see in Metroid Dread though. They basically took the idea of SAX from Metroid Fusion and really expanded upon it. These are basically robotic creatures that you'll run into in certain areas of the game where earlier on, though, you're going to have to outmaneuver or outrun them. Some of it is using certain abilities, like a cloaking ability to make sure they don't see you, to basically being very careful where they are on the map. And if you basically get caught by one of them, though, it's 99% of the time, it's instant death, though. It is possible to basically break out of their grip, though, by pressing the X button at the right time. But that is very, very difficult to do, and 99% of the time, it is instant death right away. These are going to lead to a lot of frustrated moments for those who play the game, though. They're kind of like what Tyrants was in the Resident Evil 2 remake, both challenging but frustrating at the same time. Challenging is whatever strategy you had in the old Resident Evil 2 game, you had to throw it out to come up with a new strategy, and frustrating in terms of basically if you're doing a puzzle, Tyrant's going to come in and ruin it for you, and you're going to have to outmaneuver him or outwalk him, or outrun him until he's out in the clear, so you could do that puzzle again, though. But like Tyrant in the Resident Evil 2 remake, though, the EMMIs won't follow you everywhere. They are confined to a certain area, so they're not going to follow you each and everywhere you go, though. That said, being this is a Metroid game, and since there is backtracking, is well known in Metroid games to be exact, though, there are times when you will have to go through the areas the EMMIs are in, and you're going to have to figure out the best way to basically dodge the EMMIs for the time being. There are points in the game where you will receive basically a plasma cannon by defeating a certain mid-boss, though, and once you get that plasma cannon, you can use that to take out the EMMIs, though. Some EMMIs may have the ability like the cloaking abilities, others have speed boosts, others shoot ice and all, so you'll earn those abilities for them, but until a certain point in the game when you can get the plasma cannon, though, it involves dodging the EMMIs, and that can be a bit frustrating at times. That said, though, it wasn't frustrated to the point where it made the game unplayable or anything like that. It just means try harder and then try to figure out the best way to dodge them, the best way to avoid them, using your different abilities like cloaking or walking very carefully to ensure they don't see you and all. So the EMMIs can be frustrated at times, and some folks, it might turn people off from playing it, though. Others may not be bothered by this and keep trying and trying, and believe me, I've died several times trying to deal with these robotic creatures, though. It took me several tries to overcome them in certain areas, though, but it's all worth it when you get that plasma cannon and aim correctly and take out those enemies once and for all and get their power-ups and abilities and all that stuff. Overall, Metroid Dread is an enjoyable entry into the Metroid series, and one that I think I would highly recommend for those who are fans of the series, or those who like the whole Metroid, or Metroidvania genre, or have the Nintendo Switch and so forth. At its best, though, visually the game looks great, even though it's a 2D game. It has a 3D background, runs at 60 FPS, though. The gameplay is tired and true, though, and it uses the control scheme from basically Metroid Samus Returns with some adjustment here and there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, though. At its worst, however, is using the Metroid Samus Return control scheme that may not sit well with everybody who may have not been a fan of that control scheme or not, or those who may have never played Metroid Samus Return, since that was released back on the Nintendo 3DS. And of course, dealing with the EMMIs, if I'm saying the name correctly, though, that's going to lead to a lot of frustrated moments, and I know some people that might turn some folks off, but I didn't find it to be basically made the game unplayable or any chance. It just pushes you to try harder and figure out the best way to avoid them for the time being until you get that plasma cannon, though. But I can see where that might be a turnoff for some folks, though. But in either case, though, I think Metroid Dread is a great entry in the Metroid series, though. It's definitely a recommendation, though. I can see why this could be nominated for Game of the Year, though. And it's going to be very interesting to see where Nintendo takes the Metroid series or Samus Aran going forward, though, considering that this is supposedly the conclusion of what started in the original Metroid game back during the NES era. So I'm very curious to see what direction they will take Samus Aran or Metroid in general going forward. And should another entry in the Metroid series get a remake treatment like Metroid Samus Returns, I wouldn't mind the developers Mercury System that did a great job with this game. I wouldn't mind if they were to remake, say, Metroid Fusion, though. I mean, imagine them taking the ideas they had in Dread and applying some of it in a full-on remake of Metroid Fusion, though. I mean, if what they did with Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS was impressive, though, I can't imagine if they were to remake Metroid Fusion and put that on the Nintendo Switch. That, I think, would be pretty amazing. At least in my book, it would be, though. Okay, before I end this video, I want to give my thoughts on the Eternals. I just recently saw this today in the movie theaters, though. I have to say, this is definitely a different kind of film that we've seen in the MCU or from a Marvel movie in general, though. Up to this point, though, I mean, most of the movies that we've seen have been, somewhat fast-paced, action-packed, though. I mean, we had Black Widow and Shang-Chi and the Legends of the Ten Rings, though. This one is a little bit different, and for some folks that may or may not fit very well with some folks might like it, some folks may not, to be exact, though. Basically, it's a story about these beings, though, coming to Earth 7,000 years ago, and somewhat protecting humanity from the deviants to basically somewhat helping them along the way, though. And you see about these characters based on the lives based on how they lived on the Earth for 7,000 years. Some of it takes place in present time. Some of it they show flashbacks back during like the Babylon era and so forth. So it's a really interesting approach, though, and although the movie takes place on Earth, though, it definitely has a bit of a cosmic feel to it, though, which certainly isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's definitely different than, say, the kind of cosmic feel you would get was from Guardians of the Galaxy, which again depends on the person who directed that. Obviously, with Guardians of the Galaxy, that was done by James Gunn and all. The thing is that if you're going into this expecting an action-packed approach like Black Widow or Shang-Chi in the Legends of the Ten Rings, you're probably not going to find that here. There's a lot of, and most of it really doesn't pick up until near the end and all, and that's when you start seeing a lot of the action pack, or the third act to be exact, though. Although there is some combat here and there, though, and there are some funny moments, but this one tends to be a little bit more on the serious side than other entries into the MCU, though. And so it's definitely a different kind of superhero movie compared to the other MCU movies, though. But in the end, I enjoyed it, though. I like the approach that they did with this movie, though. It definitely gave off somewhat of a, well, you could say to some degree, a 2001 Space Odyssey vibe to it, though, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I will say Salma Hayek, I apologize for not saying the name correctly, and Angelina Jolie did a great job playing some of the Eternals, especially, and also the other actors as well, though. I just think for some Marvel fans, this is going to be a bit different than other entries in the Marvel series, though. But again, there are those who are going to like it, and there are those who are going to hate it, though. I certainly enjoyed it, though, even though the movie is about 3 hours long. So yeah, it is a long movie, though. But I can see where it might turn some folks off. But in either case, excuse me, in either case, though, I thought it was a good movie, though, and it's worth taking a look if you are basically an MCU fan, though. Whether you like it or not, that is going to be your call at the end of the day, though. Okay, this concludes this video review of Metroid Dread and my thoughts on the movie Eternals. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Metroid Dread, though? Was it worth the 19-year wait, though? Do you think this is do you think the game is good? Do you think it's a very good conclusion to what started with the first Metroid game? Do you wonder what direction they'll take Samus Aran going forward, though? And what are your thoughts about the movie Eternals, though? Did you see the movie, though? And if so, did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think it was an interesting direction they went with the Eternal movie, though? And would you want to see a sequel to the Eternals? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!